Now, joining us now, one of the four candidates, former House member. He also ran for Commonwealth's attorney, Bill Janis. Great to have you with us, Bill.
Hey, good morning, John. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Now, you've got, we got about what? We got about nine weeks to the primary.
8 weeks this coming Tuesday.
8
but
weeks.
Who's counting?
Okay. 8 weeks this coming Tuesday. So, winning one of these things, there's four people in the field. I've got you as the slight morning line favorite. Right now, what is your pathway to victory?
Wow, and you played the bumper song was very superstitious, so now you've got me really worried. No, the pathway to victory in a race like this is you bring yours and the other candidates bring theirs, and whoever brings the most wins. And it's good old-fashioned grassroots organizing. It's blocking and tackling, basically. No Hail Mary passes, nothing fancy. You go and you try to meet the largest number of voters who live in the precincts in the Senate 12th District. You introduce yourself to them. It's a job interview. I've always said it's like a job interview where you meet your potential employer, in this case the voters who are sovereign under our system, and you introduce yourself to them. You tell them a little bit about your background, your education, your experience, your track record of performance, in my case, your proven record of performance and experience. And you ask them to hire you to go to work for them at Richmond in the Virginia State Senate. And that's what we've been doing, trying to meet people in small group settings and in large group settings. And it's just meet them, introduce yourself, answer their questions, ask for their vote. And if they say yes, you put them on a list and you remind them to come out 8 weeks from Tuesday.
Okay, we've got 8 weeks. You've now had a chance to evaluate some of the other candidates in there. And I know the stock answer is, well, I'm just worried about myself. But you have three other people. What is it that distinguishes your positions from the other three candidates, Bill?
I guess I'd start it out by saying in a job interview, you generally don't go to a job interview and say, here's all the reasons why you shouldn't hire the other folks, here's why you should hire me. Okay? Having said that, I dare say if you talk to the other candidates, I know every single one of these candidates, I consider them all to be friends. In many cases, I've known some of the other candidates for 10 years or longer. And I think where I have a little bit of an edge is we're all going to be pro-Second Amendment. We're all going to be for lower taxes, less government. We're all going to be limited government. I dare say we're all going to be pro-life, right?
Right.
I think what the difference here is I think Ben Franklin said, well done is better than well said, right? And in this case, I've got a 10-year track record of taking tens of thousands of votes in the General Assembly of Virginia, of producing outcomes, of going into that battlefield called the General Assembly of Virginia, and not just thinking the right way or voting the right way, but fighting for what I believe in, and moving legislation through not just through the House, but through the Senate, where oftentimes it received a hostile reception. And I didn't add up the numbers, but I think I have something like a 444 batting average over the course of the 10 years I was there of getting legislation introduced and passed. And it's not like I was taking layup kind of pieces of legislation. I introduced and passed the first rollback of the one gun a month law in Virginia in 2004. We had legislation that provided real property tax relief to disabled Virginia veterans.
Right.
I introduced legislation that didn't pass. House Joint Resolution 615 would have banned the practice of raising taxes or fees in budget language. Passed out of the House with broad bipartisan support, died in the Senate committee because no one made a motion on the bill, died for failure of a motion. There's video of it out on the Internet. And then they waited till I left the room and then brought the bill back up and took a vote and killed it. And it was Republicans and Democrats on that committee oftentimes that gave my legislation a hostile reception. So I think if there's something that distinguishes me, it's a 10-year record of proven leadership and performance in the General Assembly, and I'll be ready on day one if I'm elected. If God willing, if the voters choose to elect me, I'll be ready to go to work for them on day one when the General Assembly convenes.
One of the candidates in your race, Vince Haley, has come out with an idea, and that is to roll back or get rid of over time the Virginia state income tax. He's made that one of the centerpieces of his campaign, so it's an idea. Do you think that is practical, and is that something that you would also be in favor of?
Over the course of the 10 years I was in the General Assembly, I must have co-patroned or voted on a dozen measures that are similar to this and in favor of it. I think tax relief for Virginia taxpayers is a good thing. I think his premise is sound, which is the three great impediments to job creation and wealth in Virginia are excessive taxation, excessive regulation, and excessive litigation. And it's the cost of these things that end up creating barriers for large employers and small employers to create jobs and create wealth. Now, we do a pretty good job on the litigation side. This is not the preferred venue if you want to sue McDonald's, for example. This is not the preferred venue if you want to introduce some kind of a crazy frivolous lawsuit, right? So we do a pretty good job with that. We do a pretty good job on the regulatory side of keeping the cost of regulatory compliance lower for Virginians at the state level. We still have the crazy federal government and all of the EPA regulations on coal and on other industries that are an impediment, but they're a national problem. Where we can look for relief is on the tax side. And over the 10 years I was in the General Assembly, I co-patroned measures that, for example, would cap spending in the state budget, the spending growth to an equation that would have population growth and inflation in it, so that if you reduce the constant growth in state spending, you begin to relieve the pressure on the revenue side of the equation, and you can offer tax relief to Virginians. I've authored, patroned, or voted for dozens, if not hundreds, of pieces of legislation that provided tax relief to Virginians over the 10 years I was there. I think the idea's got merit.
Okay, the reality of it, though, is everybody is saying, we need to cut government spending in Virginia. Republicans have been in control of a house and a half, right, for some time, and spending has gone up and up and up and up. Why?
That's a very good question. I think if you put 140 legislators in a room and you say, write a budget, I don't think you'd be surprised if you got 140 different budgets. You'd get 140 different sets of priorities about what's most important for state spending. And trying to reconcile those 140 competing priorities is part of the challenge of working in a legislative body, working in the House of Delegates or working in the Senate. You don't always get, if I were king for a day, I'm sure I would write a budget and enact a budget that I would love. But our process doesn't work that way. You've got to get a consensus budget that 140 legislators will vote for. You need at least 51 votes in the House. You need at least 21 votes in the Senate. And then the governor gets a whack at the budget as well. So once again, you've had the problem in the past where Democrats and Republicans, for that matter, in the Senate, have used the budget, the one piece of legislation that really must pass every 2 years, and they've taken it as a hostage in order to try and force generally House Republicans to relent on their resistance to Medicaid expansion, for example. In 2014, we saw the budget used as a hostage to try and force expansion of Obamacare through the Medicaid program in Virginia. Mm-hmm. The budget is a difficult process because you're trying to write a consensus spending document that reflects the political priorities of 140 people, each of whom comes to Richmond on behalf of their own constituents, working for the common good, certainly, but trying to do what's right for the people that sent them there, who hired them to represent them in Richmond.
Let's switch to energy. Mountain Valley Pipeline. What do you think?
Good idea. Drill here, drill now. You pay less, and we ought to have an all-of-the-above energy policy. We ought to be exploiting. We could be the Saudi Arabia of natural oil. With fracking, we're leading the world. Okay, I think we should be exploiting the natural resources in a safe, environmentally friendly way. But yes, I'm for the pipeline.
How do you weigh in on the ethics debate?
I don't think personally that anybody runs for office because they want to get rich. I think it's public service, and I think that's true of both the Democrats and the Republicans. But I also think that there needs to be some reform. I'm waiting to see what the governor's going to do. I find it a little bit ironic that we're being lectured on ethics. We as Republicans are being lectured on ethics by the guy who was in charge of renting out the Lincoln bedroom at the White House when Bill Clinton was president. I'm not sure that you could solve the problem with the people that created it. But it's a good start. It's a good first step. We need ethics reform. And once again, I left office with hands as clean as they were empty the last time I was in public life. And I think that it was in need of reformation because of the high-profile problems that we'd had here very recently.
Governor McAuliffe put amendments back on a compromise that was set to reopen Colonial Downs Raceway. That's about 600 jobs in the New Kent area. Some of that bleeds into your district. He put amendments that were untenable for the owner, so they just shut the whole thing down. If you were to be in the House in 2000, that would be 16, can we do anything to get this solved and get those jobs back?
Over the course of the 10 years I was in the House, the situation at Colonial Downs was a perennial political football, okay? Mm-hmm. And what you've got are the competing interests of the ownership group who make money. That's why they open that racetrack. Their motivation is to make money.
Right.
And the horsemen and the breeders. And the whole premise, we have to go back to the premise for having parimutuel betting in Virginia and the premise for having a racetrack in the first place, going back 10 years before I was ever in office. The premise was that having live horse racing in Virginia would be a good thing for the horse racing industry and the breeding industry in Virginia.
Right.
And agriculture is the largest sector of our economy, or was at the time, and this was good for horse breeders. But the horse breeders want the maximum number of live racing days in order to showcase their horses and grow the industry for horse breeding in Virginia, right? Mm-hmm. That's not how the ownership group saw things. They make money by parimutuel betting.
Right.
And if they could have a track, the only reason there's a track there is because we demanded that there be a track in exchange for the right to have parimutuel betting in Virginia and off-track betting. So, this is a kind of complicated thing where we're going to have to drill down, roll up our sleeves, and figure out if we can get a ownership group that's going to be willing to work with us to do the right thing by the Virginia horse industry, which was the rationale for that racetrack in the first place. The other question would be, why is the state involved in this anyway? Right? I mean,
right.
The only reason the state is involved in this is because a decade before I was elected, the General Assembly and the governor at the time believed that having a racetrack in New Kent County would showcase Virginia horses, showcase Virginia horse breeding, and would be good for the horse breeding industry in Virginia.
Right.
If it isn't, then I'm not sure why the state's involved in it at all.
I think you hit the nail on the head on that. Got a couple more questions. Religious Freedom Reform Act in Virginia, where does it stand? Do we need to expand it, and why?
A lot of the measures you're hearing about in Indiana and a lot of the measures you're hearing about in Arkansas are already law in Virginia. And that's another thing that we fought about for a long time in the House of Delegates. Can it be improved upon? Absolutely. I still think there's insufficient protections for property owners, for example, who use public signage or advertising to show that they are people of faith. So if you put a fish or a cross on an ad in the newspaper, or a fish or a cross, which are have been symbolic since the very first centuries of Christianity, symbolic of being a Christian believer, you are asking for an investigation, mostly by the feds, but also the state under the Fair Housing Act. So there are things we can do. What I find really cynical and really hypocritical is a lot of the people that are leading the charge in decrying, a lot of the people that are, going after businesses in Indiana and targeting them because they are Christians and they refuse service to certain classes of customers, do an awful lot of business in China and an awful lot of business in the Middle East, and I don't hear them raising the same kind of concerns with the government of Saudi Arabia, the government of Iran, the government of China.
Right.
And I think there's a fair amount of hypocrisy there, no question. Cynical hypocrisy.
Right. No, I mean, hit the nail on the head with that. I've got just under 1 minute, Bill. Final question, ABC. When are we going to rein in these officers?
There is clearly something wrong at the ABC. And I know ABC agents, and they're good people, but we've had a series of incidents now, at least 2 that I'm aware of, just in the immediate aftermath of having settled a lawsuit for pretty egregious conduct. And I don't know whether the problem is the culture or the training or the mission of the ABC, and I think it's probably the mission where the General Assembly can focus on and can find some way to improve this. Look, the ABC is an agency that's supposed to regulate the sellers of alcohol, those businesses that are licensed to sell alcohol retail to individual Virginians. And I think we've got every single police agency in the Charlottesville area, the Charlottesville Police Department, the University Police Department, the Albemarle Police Department.
Right,
I worked as an intern.
We got to get the ABC out of there. Hey, we're
they should
we're out of
focus
time,
on
Bill.
regulating those who sell alcohol to minors, not on those minors who buy alcohol, and let the other police agencies focus on the minors.
We're out of time, Bill. What's your website?
www.billjanis.gop.
Thanks, Bill. Have a good weekend.
Hey, thanks, John. Bye.